Good morning to our Wednesday class. Let's start the class with some prayers. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Bhu Bhava Swaha Tat Savitra Varenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat Asto Ma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamya ओम सहना भवतु सहना भुनक्तु सवीर्यं कर्वावहि तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्वेषावहि ओम शांति 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 ओम. We often talk about the word solitude. Solitude. This solitude is a balm for some people, and it's bane for others. Why is that? A lot of people, they just shrink when they hear the word solitude. Always seeking for some external fulfillment. Why do we do that? Why do we run away from solitude? By nature, we are solitary beings. We were born alone. We all live our unique experiences alone. And we all know we will die alone too. Yet, so many of us can say that we don't like to be alone. In our language, there are two aspects of being alone. And these are the two words that describe the state of aloneness. One is loneliness, the other one is solitude. One word denotes the joy of being alone, solitude, and the other, the pain, loneliness. Since each one of us is essentially alone, we should find out, we should know, how can we overcome the pain of loneliness? Because our real nature is not pain, our real nature is not sorrow. Our real nature is joy, bliss. How can we arrive at the fullness of solitude? All religions begin with the promise that human beings are incomplete by themselves. The worldly remedy is acquisition of companionship. The religious remedy is attunement to God. Loneliness is not assuaged by companions. Religious leaders, they point it out all the time. Because it is only temporarily masked, forgotten until the mind perceives the impermanence of the relationship it has depended upon. And this could be a relationship with the other beings, or relationship with the material wealth, or relationship with some place. Solitude is often equated with loneliness, but the two are poles apart. Poles apart. Only in deep solitude, when the mind becomes still, does the state of fullness exist. When solitude decreases, our mind becomes extroverted, dependent upon the surroundings, or it wants to live in the crowded place, or even sometimes in crowded memories, likes to go to that place where there were some kind of a get-togethers, some kind of a extroverted fun. When we are preoccupied with memories and anxieties, the present experience loses their vividness. So that means we are living in the past. We just lose the present. And that's how the mind becomes dull. Very meaningful communication is choked. And inwardly, how do we feel? We feel stressed. We feel agitated. And ultimately, we feel very lonely. So loneliness does not arise from the isolation from others, but isolation from ourselves. That's why you could be in a crowded room, you can still feel lonely. So loneliness is the isolation from ourselves. If the mind is overburdened with anxieties, that means we are not with ourselves. And ourself, the self, part of God, is the most precious of all. And it lies overlooked. We never pay any attention to it. So solitude, not companionship, is the opposite of loneliness. Living in solitude is living with a fresh, open mind. That rejects memories of the past. Why? Because it's called a dead past and anxieties of the future. Let me repeat it again. Solitude is living with a fresh, open mind that rejects memory of the past and anxieties of the future. In solitude, the external supports are abandoned. External supports. And we are alone, facing ourselves. We are looking at ourselves, the real nature. No distractions are intertwining the mind or sedating our mind. Mind wants to understand what the real purpose is, who I am. If understanding seems imminent, we thrive on our solitude. And we are unwilling to allow any other thought to invade and deter our quest for experiencing the fullness of our real nature, our being. In solitude alone, we can confront ourselves and even cleanse ourselves in solitude. In solitude alone, we can experience the deeper joys and the purposes within. In solitude alone, we can return to society to serve purposefully. Without personal need, without any personal desire. So purification of the mind from its cumbersome dependencies, communion with the inner personality, and relating to others out of an inner strength can all be achieved when we cherish moments of solitude? Are we giving those moments of solitude to ourselves in our daily practice? Or even our moments of solitude, are we just constantly rushing into this external world, thinking about when it's going to be over, my meditation practice or my prayers? Go into that busy world. See, our mind wants to be free. That's why they say freedom is the state of mind. Not freedom from something, but a sense of freedom. Freedom to doubt, freedom to question anything. So intense, active, vigorous, it throws away any form of dependency, slavery, even acceptance. Such a freedom implies to some people being all alone. And that is a loneliness. But remember, solitude is an inward state of mind. It's not living with somebody, or not living with a lot of people, or living with this kind of a person. Solitude is a state of mind. But most of us inwardly are never alone. Never alone. There's a difference between isolation. See, we can understand all this with the help of this terminology. So most of us are never alone. There's a difference between isolation, cutting ourselves off, and aloneness and solitude. There's a difference. We all know what is to be isolated. It's almost like building a wall around us so that nobody can ever hurt us. We cannot build a physical wall, but we build a mental wall. We don't want to be vulnerable again. We want to live in that ivory tower of ideology. But aloneness, that is a loneliness. Aloneness is something different. You are never alone because you are full of all the memories, all the conditionings, all the mutterings of yesterdays. Your mind is never clear of all the rubbish it has accumulated. To be alone, you must die to the past. We carry a lot of burden with ourselves. Sometimes it's not even our burden. We carry the burden of what thousands of people have said, whether it's true or not, memories of all our misconceptions or misfortunes. All that burden. To abandon all that totally is to be alone. And the mind that is alone is a very innocent mind. The mind which is alone is very young mind. It is alive at whatever age, and only such a mind can see what truth is. Only innocent mind can see the truth. Because there's no burden on it and there is no flaw in it. So in this solitude, you will begin to understand the necessity of living with yourself as you are. Not as you want to be, as you are. Not as you think you should be, or as you have been. Accepting the situation, accepting whatever is. See if you can look at yourself without any tremor, any false modesty, any fear, any justification or condemnation. Just try to see yourself as you actually are. No label. So can you live with what you actually are? Knowing yourself to be sometimes dull, sometimes sharp, sometimes with affection, and sometimes flattery. Can you live with that? Neither accepting all this nor rejecting all this, but just observing it without becoming morbid, depressed, or elated. Now let us ask ourselves another question. Is this freedom, this solitude, this coming into contact with the whole structure of what we are in ourselves? Is this freedom? Will it come with time? Is it a gradual process? Obviously not. Because as soon as you introduce time, you are enslaving yourself more and more. If you think that no, in future, another life, or 10 years, there's a more conditioning. The lives which we are living right now, most of us have very little solitude. Very little solitude. Even when we are alone, as I said earlier, our mind is crowded by the memories of so many experiences, so much anxiety, so much misery, and so much conflict. And we keep on carrying this burden all the time. We never leave them behind. We don't even know how to leave them behind when we sleep, or leave them behind when we go on vacation, or leave them behind when we go into our prayer room. We keep on carrying this burden with us all the time. We need to learn how to solve the problem, whatever it is, let it go. Never carrying it to the next day. Or a yogi guru says never to even the next minute. Then even if we are in a crowded house or a crowded marketplace, we have the solitude. And that solitude indicates a fresh mind, an innocent mind. To have inward solitude and space is very important for a sadhak, because it implies freedom to be, freedom to go, freedom to function, freedom to fly high. One can see directly that it is only when the mind is silent that there is possibility of clarity. The whole purpose of meditation is to bring about such a state of mind. The yogi guru say, meditate every day. Start meditating sitting down, but eventually meditate while working also. A mind who is this kind of a freshness can meditate. A burdened mind cannot meditate, no matter how beautiful the seat is or how beautiful the room is. or how beautiful the weather is. So the whole purpose of meditation is to bring about such a state of mind, to control our thought. Crowded mind, in that kind of an atmosphere, you cannot control your thoughts. And for this, we have to lay the foundation. So unless a person lays the foundation, which is to be free from fear, free from sorrow, free from anxiety, and all the traps one lays for oneself. Most of the people say that we don't know how it is possible for a mind to be actually quiet. How can we have this kind of a free mind? This is the most difficult thing to have. To me, it seems like that one of the greatest stumbling blocks in life is this constant struggle to reach, to achieve. We just don't understand that we don't have to reach somewhere to achieve. We can achieve right here, right now. If we understand this whole equipment, how it functions. But we think that we need to reach to achieve, we need to acquire. Because since childhood, we were trained that way. We just want to acquire more, have more, learn more. But we got to tell our mind, in the external world, sure, that was feasible. In the internal world, that's not how it works. To realize that psychologically there is nothing permanent gives a total different approach to life. So we got to convince our mind of this philosophy. Nothing is permanent, no matter how much we acquire, no matter whom we know, no matter who loves us. Ultimately, we got to develop this relationship with God, and God is the only permanent. So the only silence we know is the silence within. Constantly, we are trying to stop the noise outside. There could be a noise outside, but that noise should not be inside. Outer noise stopped is not silence. Inner noise stopped is silence. So silence is something entirely different. Entirely different. And this silence is not a product of a quiet mind. It's not a product of the brain cells that have understood the whole structure and say that for God's sake, be quiet. That is not a silence. When we are telling somebody to be quiet, it's only the sound is quietening. There's no silence which is we are feeling internally. Nor is that silence the outcome of attention in which the observer is the observed. Then there's no friction. And that is not silence. Silence cannot be described. What can be described is the known. Objective world can be described. Silence cannot be described. And the freedom from the known can come into being only when there is a dying every day to be the known. So we got to understand this deep philosophy of silence. That silence, which is not the silence of the ending of noise, is only a small beginning. That's why we say that meditate in a quieter place where nobody can externally disturb you. But the silence is when the internal disturbances have been silenced too. It is like going through a small hole to an enormous, wide, expansive ocean, to an immeasurable, timeless state. That's where silence takes you. So in other words, when you say that you want to go into your meditation room, in front of your altar, sitting over there, quietening, keeping all the disturbances out, that is like a small hole you are entering into. Ultimately, vastness can be experienced only after that. And in order to experience that vastness of that silence, you need to give some time. Even though it's beyond time, beyond space, but initially you have to give some time. And that is the beauty of silence. But this you cannot achieve unless you have understood the whole structure of consciousness. That's why the Swadhyaya is important. That's why the meaning of this bliss versus the meaning of the outer pleasure, the meaning of the desirelessness versus the meaning of the worldly desires, meaning of no despair. And what is despair? This knowledge is needed. That's why we go to a guru, to understand it all. Then perhaps you may come upon the mystery which nobody can reveal to you. Guru says, I cannot reveal it to you. I can only talk about it. I can tell you my experience, but your experience, you have to go through the experience. And for that, you have to do the sadhana. And once you have that experience, nobody can destroy it for you. Because that is the permanent experience. The worldly achievements can be taken from you. The relationships can be taken from you. Nothing is permanent here. The only permanent is this reality. Getting in touch with this reality, once you have it, nobody can shake it off. You won't be able to put it into words, but nobody can take it from you. Then you will see that this mind is limitless. Because all that burden was in mind. All that pain and the sorrow and the despair was in the mind. All that fear and clinging was in the mind. When you let go of that kind of a mind, you see that there's a limitless. That is the only truth, that limitlessness. And that is the only reality. So this silence or solitude or aloneness, no matter which word you use, they take you towards that. Otherwise, loneliness, in loneliness, you are burdened. In aloneness, you are totally free. And there are a lot of teachers, they showed us that in order to realize this, it may not be conducive to stay or remain in this busy world. For the majority of the people, it's not possible. But then these days, for majority of the people, it's not even possible to live their worldly life too. But those saints, see, King Janak could do that. But then how many King Janaks are there? Could live in the world, be a king, and still attain this? That's why there are a lot of examples in front of us. Jesus was missing for 18 years. Where was he? What did he do? Went into solitude. Buddha did the same thing. He went in seclusion for 8 years in the forest. Many other saints and the sages, they have done it. If that quest we have, sure we should do that. But if you don't have that kind of a deep quest, as a human being, we should definitely spend some time every day to just lock ourselves in a room. We are living with other people, tell them, this is my time between me and my God. I need to find myself. The jungles we cannot go, but in our own homes we can create a jungle. A little room or a little corner, just go in there. Leave the shoes out, leave the phone out, leave the computer out, and leave all the churning of the mind out too. Just go there with this kind of a quest that I'm going into a jungle the way Buddha did, or the way Jesus Christ did, or the way a lot of other saints and the sages, they did. It has to be done every day. Every day. Without fail. Then you will see the silence which you feel is a lot more pleasurable than the sound which you hear in any kind of a music outside. The silence is so pleasing. This silence is giving you all the answers, which tons of books cannot give you. Dozens of teachers cannot answer your questions. But the silence will answer every question you ever had. But just like we have to open a book, read it to get the answer, the same way you got to reach at the steps of this silence. This is solitude. Get all the chattering out, keep it out. Just go there. Make a promise to yourself that for next month, at least I'll do it and see how it feels. Minimum half an hour. And once you start enjoying it, you will see that automatically this half an hour will become longer and it will seem shorter. Other family members might say, what are you doing there for so long? And you will say, I didn't spend that much time. You will be risen about the time. So first we have to understand what the silence is. We got to see the worth of it. We got to see that with this silence, with this solitude, you will know the meaning of life. You will have the joy while living in this body. And then ultimately, not the knowledge alone, you have to experience it. And in order to experience, you have to do this kind of a sadhana also. So with this, I will end this class today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnase Purnamadai Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.